to the BACCF 2021 webinar, Boeing Leadership Series, Travel Confidently. I'm Alexandre Piquet, 2021 president of the BACCF and founder of the Piquet Law Firm. Welcome to the BACCF's first edition of the 2021 Leadership Series brought to you by the Boeing Company. Thank you, Boeing. Our event today will focus on traveling confidently. March 11, 2020 was the last in-person meeting the BACCF held. As we complete the first year of the new normal, we are all looking for assurances that life will resume as we once knew it, and travel, either for business or leisure, will return. In 2015, Marilyn Blanco Rice, during her third BACCF presidency, saw the need for more in-depth conversations and started the BACCF CEO Series, later changing the name to the BACCF Leadership Series to be more inclusive of the many leaders guiding us. As we continue this series, FedEx and Boeing will be bringing in innovative and invigorating events this year. Thank you both for your contributions. The BACCF has a full schedule of events this month. Please join us on March 17th when we welcome Ambassador Nestor Forsters, the Brazilian ambassador to Washington, and our Consul General to Miami, Ambassador João Mendes, who will be discussing the Brazil-US partnership for 2021 and beyond. On March 26th, we'll be demystifying cryptocurrency, and we'll welcome Luciano Froes, co-president of One World Services, to guide us through this complicated currency. Our special thanks to Haya3 and Achei USA newspaper for their continued partnership. It is my pleasure to welcome our moderator today, Diane Pereira, Project Management Specialist at Boeing, who will introduce our speakers and moderate the event today. Any questions you may have throughout the presentation, kindly send it by chat, and at the end of the presentations, we'll try and answer each question. Welcome, Diane. Welcome, Horacio. Welcome, Alexandre. Welcome, Lendo. Diane, you have the mic.
Thanks, Alexandre Piquet. It's a pleasure. Thank you for the great welcome remarks here for everyone. Well, we at Boeing are delighted to partner with the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce of Florida for this leadership series. This is the first of 4 meetings that we are happy to host at the Chamber. The world is going through unprecedented difficult times, and the aviation sector is facing many challenges. During our conversation today, we will hear how key players in the industry are working together to ensure a safe travel journey. So when you are ready to fly, we are ready to welcome you. Our 3 panelists brings unique and complementary perspective and expertise, and will share the impacts of the pandemic on the business, as well as how the industry is moving forward, thanks to its resilience. We will begin with Horacio Marques, the Regional Director for Member and External Relations for Latin America and the Caribbean at IATA, who will talk to us about the importance of international policy coordination on the road to recovery. Horacio will then be followed by Landon Loomis, Boeing's Vice President for Global Policy and Managing Director for Boeing Brazil. And as a manufacturer, Boeing is working across the industry to enhance health safeguards and develop new solutions for its customers. Alexandre Cavalcanti, who is American Airlines Sales Director for Brazil, will wrap up the presentation segment of our event and present the point of view of an airline at the front line of the industry and how it's overcoming the challenges posed by the pandemic. Horacio, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Diana, and to Alexandra and to the Chamber. We much appreciate the opportunity to be with you and your members today, and to speak to you a bit about the road to recovery, at least from the airline vantage point. And as I don't know that your membership knows who IATA is, but the International Air Transport Association is the trade association that represents 290 some odd airlines around the world, including most of the Brazilian carriers are included there. And most of the airlines around the world that fly to Brazil as well are part of our membership. Our chief mission is advocacy amongst and standard building and providing services of different sorts that we can provide to the industry and to the greater travel stakeholder value chain. So with that, I think hopefully you are aware of who IATA is, and if not, then certainly would welcome an opportunity to have further discussion about IATA and what IATA does to support the airline industry around the world. I have a presentation, and I'll try to be as succinct as I can, so bear with me, but I'll try to rush through some of this so that at least that leaves time for more of the discussion at the tail end. Again, thank you. I'm Mauricio Marquez. I'm the Regional Director for External Relations at IATA. I should start out also by saying that our mission as an airline industry is to do everything we possibly can to regain confidence in the return to air travel and to look for partnership and engagement with governments in an effort to see how the reopening of borders can take place, bring about the reconnectivity of economies around the world effectively. And obviously this involves mitigating the risk qualifiers that apply given the circumstances we're living through this pandemic, this unprecedented situation, but also taking into account the necessity and the economic benefits that aviation makes possible and why it's a critical component to the recovery, the economic recovery that we all rely on, whether it be Brazil or all of your neighboring states in Latin America or to North America or to Europe and anywhere else around the world for that matter. So next slide, please. As background, I think, and it's useful to share, globally, this graph depicts the volume of air travel and dating back to 2019, pre-COVID era, and relative to 2020, when we really saw the worst of it as far as the COVID crisis and what essentially turned to be the almost a halt of air traffic and aviation around the world. And it takes us through 2021 and what is the forecasted recovery through the balance of this year, if we can call that a forecasted recovery. But it describes how the airline industry's recovery is at a global scale will likely be weaker than expected due to the risk of restrictive government policy measures that are out there and the responses that are taking effect as a result of virus variants around the world. We know from experience of, since January and booking data, from February and March this year, that the first and second quarter of this year will show a slower recovery than what was originally anticipated. More importantly, is that the expected recovery for the second half of 2021 is at risk, is a result, of these variants, these viral variants, and that obviously has created some holdups and new restrictions that are being imposed by states as a result of risk and fear of the virus entering their countries. So the deployment of the vaccine obviously is going to be a significant factor in hopefully bringing about positive results over the course of this year. But clearly for the balance of 2021, we have reserved forecasts as far as what that outlook might look like. And at this point, relative to what the red line on this chart depicts what was originally forecasted back in December, that we would see at the end of 2021 recover to some extent relative to flying levels that we had in 2019. Unfortunately, at this point, we're seeing that maybe 33% is what we'll see instead of the 51% as part of that recovery phase. So next slide, please. Connectivity, obviously, for Latin America, Brazil included significantly amongst the Latin states, is obviously been affected by the pandemic. This has been devastating to the region in an unfortunate way. Obviously, the number of city pairs that have been pulled down as a result of the shutdown in many of these markets has been significant. We lost at approximately 1,000 city pairs as of last year at the height of the pandemic. This was what was affecting Latin America. So there is no alternative to air service and the critical nature that air service provides, whether it be on the tourism side or on the business development side or in the shipment of goods and services. These are all factors that are completely reliant on air service in a significant way, and for perishables and last minute shipments. So these are catastrophic circumstances, unfortunately. We're seeing a recovery, obviously. This is dating back to April of 2020 when we saw the worst of it and the loss of these 1,000 city pairs, but we've slowly been picking up from this. Next slide, please. The next slide? Yeah, thank you. Regionally, the impact on jobs and the GDP, obviously, supported by air transport is even more concerning. In Latin America, we lost 3.9 million jobs and over 90 billion in GDP. All economies in the region are reliant on tourism and foreign trade, as I mentioned a moment ago. Agriculture, fisheries need cargo and export to export their perishable goods to consumers in other parts of the world. So without aviation, tourists are not able to visit, whether it be Rio, Sao Paulo, or parts of Brazil and other parts of Latin America and the Caribbean. So we understand that managing the public health crisis, excuse me, is top priority for governments, but the longer aviation in the Americas remains restricted in a significant way, the more precarious the situation will become, not just for airlines, but for all of the other businesses that depend on efficient air connectivity. Next slide, please. More specifically, in the case of Brazil, we calculated for December of 2020, more than 500,000 jobs were at risk, an estimated 12 billion reduction in GDP. Estimated revenue losses for the Brazilian airlines alone was at 13.5 billion USD equivalent. That's 71% less than what those carriers made in 2019. Nevertheless, on a more positive note, Brazil has been a leading country in the development and application of biosafety protocols in line with industry recommendations, adapting, for example, electronic passenger forms for travel, and effectively adequating its measures based on proper risk management. So Brazil, for us, has had some positive developments, albeit given the circumstances we're reading and seeing now from a government policy perspective and cooperation with industry. We have had a good dialogue with Brazil in the way that they've been able with government in Brazil in the way that they've been willing to cooperate and collaborate with the industry. So all the domestic traffic in Brazil has shown a recovery. To some extent, international traffic has dropped significantly due to the Brazilian COVID variant, which has led other countries, unfortunately, to impose restrictions on passengers originating having traveled to Brazil, from Brazil. Next slide, please. Nevertheless, and despite the catastrophic impact of COVID-19, airlines have made unprecedented efforts to help people in countries wherever possible. Airlines have flew nearly 4.5 million people home on special repatriation flights after borders closed in March of last year. And airlines transported some 1.5 million tons of cargo, mostly medical equipment, as well as providing free tickets to healthcare workers during the height of the pandemic. And today, airlines are playing a critical role in delivering vaccines to all countries across the Americas, which is the ultimate light at the end of the tunnel, as I think Alexandra mentioned at the earlier point of the discussion. The task is monumental, but just providing a single dose of any vaccine to 7.8 billion people around the world would fill the equivalent of 8,747 cargo aircraft. Next slide, please. In the short term, what are we asking for as an industry? We're asking for, we're urging, governments to partner with industry, continue in that effort, to jointly collaborate with us to support the economic restart and recovery of economies in the region. We're asking states to implement systematic testing as the common basis for entry, follow ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization's takeoff guidance, biosafety protocols, and the guidance that they've developed as part of the Council of Aviation Recovery Task Force. Accept electronic and globally aligned health credentials, provide financial relief to the sector in any way possible, and tax reductions, deferrals, and things of that nature that will provide at least a reduced cash burn to the airline sector. to the airlines in doing business in Brazil, and establish a vaccination rollout plan that will allow for the lifting of restrictions. So this will help, obviously, the industry to reconnect the Americas to the rest of the world. In the longer term, we're urging governments to work together with industry to ensure aviation is viewed as an important business partner, supporting social and economic development of the region and connecting it to the rest of the region and to the rest of the world, for that matter. Next slide, please. In the previous slide, I mentioned there's reference to Travel Pass, IATA's Travel Pass app. The Travel Pass app is really a tool and a resource that is in development for IATA and for our members, and it's really intended to be a mobile app that helps travelers to store and manage their certification for COVID-19 tests or vaccines. It is more secure and efficient than current paper processes used to manage health requirements. This is important given the potentially enormous scale of testing or vaccine verification that would need to be securely managed. So if I have to elaborate on these, it's a component of, most pressing, I should say, for the industry is to get people to fly internationally again. We depend on it to keep airlines afloat, and this is also critical to many countries that heavily depend on tourism to keep their economies going. And we understand, again, that governments have introduced current requirements and limitations as a result of risk. The IATA Travel Pass has main objectives: provide a technological solution that allows passengers, governments, and airlines to have access to the current requirements, including, for example, type of testing required, whether it's PCR, antigen, et cetera, and other considerations around it, whether it's 72 hours prior to arrival to check the test, or the 96 hours in the case of some countries. And so to build the necessary level of confidence and comfort in what this app would contain. And with what IATA Travel Pass, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're using industry standards which are widely accepted by airlines and governments to create a digital passport for passengers, collect the testing requirements, connect passengers to the labs, and share information with airlines and governments in a secure way using the best available technology to guarantee data privacy and compliance with general data protection regulation requirements. Next slide, please. So in closing, it's really about how can we safely build confidence in the reopening of borders. IATA is committed to working with governments, and we want to do what we can to be a part of the discussion and hold a seat at the table representing the industry and bringing back the economic value and benefit that aviation and our cargo can bring to all the economies in the region, including Brazil. We are working closely with the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and the World Health Organization, and clearly we want to be able to ensure that states align their policies as closely as possible to the guidance that ICAO has issued to them as well, or provided to them. So with that, I'll close. Again, thank you for this opportunity, and I'll look forward to listening to my other colleagues here. Thank you.
Thank you, Horacio.
Thank you, Horacio, for your presentation. Landon, over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Daiane. Thanks to Piqué, our other panelists, Alexandre and Horacio from American Airlines and IATA for joining us today. And Daiane, my colleague at Boeing, based here in San Jose dos Campos. It's great to be with everybody. As Daiane said, we're very pleased and glad to have the opportunity to partner with the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce of Florida to reach this audience and talk about issues that are important to our company, to our industry, to the region. My name is Landon Loomis. As Daiane said, I'm the Managing Director for Boeing Brazil and VP for Global Policy. I'm based here in Sao Paulo. And I wanted to speak with the group today following Horacio's comments about our Boeing Confident Travel Initiative. Essentially, the mission of that initiative is, Boeing to really bring its leadership to the global effort that can provide passengers and crew and the flying public with a safe, healthy, and efficient travel experience. And that's what we always do. But now in the middle of COVID, it's really at the forefront of what's needed. And from the Boeing perspective, we feel like we can really bring our expertise in engineering and in science and modeling and data analytics, bring all of that to bear to try to restore confidence and rebuild the stability of our industry. Now, for us in Boeing, this is personal. It's not only our job, it's what we are and who we are and what we do. We fly, our families fly. In fact, my mother just came to visit me in Sao Paulo and left on Friday. And so the information that we're sharing is information that we believe and that guides how we act and how we interact with our families. On the next slide, it's, what we'll talk about today, as you'll see, is it's the entire travel experience. We're going to I'll focus most of my comments on the experience inside the airplane and in flight. But in order for it to take a holistic approach, Boeing is looking at the entire experience that starts at home, and then you go to the airport, you get on, and then the airplane gets cleaned and is appropriately handled. The experience in flight, and then at the airport upon arrival. We understand that an appropriate regime and appropriate response during COVID must take this whole cycle into account. Next slide, Yanni. Thank you. And this is important for, I think for all of us to understand, this is not just us. This is not just a Boeing issue. This is the entire industry coming together. Because if there's one good thing that comes out of a pandemic that has been as universally devastating as COVID has been for all of us, it's that it brought everybody together. So industry associations and government agencies and academia, all the OEMs, including Boeing and Airbus and Embraer, the medical community, all working together to try to address and restore the confidence of the flying public. Now, these partners are important because they can help us provide an independent perspective, third-party analysis, and validate the assumptions and the results that we get from our work. So as I talk about the results that we've seen, it's the result of work that has really happened in an unprecedented way across the industry and our partners. Thanks. Next slide. So I think the starting point is important. I mean, the efforts, we've already been, more than a year in lockdown, and we've already been working very hard on these issues. So we can gather data from 2020, and we can see what is the status, what is the reality of the risk of flying. And the truth is that there are very few reports of confirmed transmissions in the air travel journey. In last year, 30.4 million total flights, 2.1 billion global passengers. So those numbers are depressed, obviously, from 2019. But in that whole cohort, in the middle of the pandemic, less than 60 known transmissions during travel. So that's 3 every 10 million passengers. That's a pretty low risk rate. And we'll look at why that is. On the next slide, please. So the first step kind of starts with cabin disinfection. You'll see in the top 2 rows, these are all solutions that exist today. These are solutions that were available off the shelf or that Boeing has helped with our partners to develop and make available to the market and to our partners. But these are all different technologies that are used to clean and disinfect the cabin. There's a whole range of technologies, and you'll see them listed here. They range from chemical disinfectant to UV technologies with a handheld UV wand, electrostatic sprayers, and antimicrobial coatings. All of these are different ways in which, different technologies that can be used to kill the virus on the airplane if it exists. Now, all of these methodologies and technologies are rigorously tested using data-driven experimentation with third parties who can validate the results. What we've seen is we subject all of these technologies to a range of analysis, including analyzing the interior of the aircraft, lab testing, doing live tests inside the airplane, and then submitting the results for third-party review, as I mentioned. So these are all technologies that exist. We're also working on new technologies that can help be even more efficient and more cost-effective for the operators and for the airlines that have to utilize them on a day-to-day basis. Those include thermal disinfection, where you use heat. You heat the interior of the aircraft in order to kill viruses, ionization technology, which is electrically charging the air to make it even cleaner, and the development of new antiviral coatings, which are currently being tested on the International Space Station and would be used for interplanetary missions to make sure we don't have, interplanetary infections here in the U.S. here on the Earth. So these are technologies that have a wide variety of very highly scientific applications, and we're driving that technology and making it available in the context of our global effort to fight the pandemic. Now, on the next slide, we'll see some additional efforts that are being, or additional realities that are key to controlling the virus on the aircraft, and that's the airflow. The airflow design itself is designed to basically to create pockets of air that are around the individual travelers. The air, because of how the aircraft itself is designed and the air filtration system itself is designed, it enters overhead, it passes straight down, passes into the floor, exits through the floor, and then the floors are based two HEPA filters, which are highly efficient particle filters that remove 99.9% of all particles in the air, including spores and bacteria and viruses. So the entire air volume of the aircraft itself is cycled through and replaced with new clean air from the outside every 2 to 3 minutes. So that fact, the way that the air flows, the fact that it is replaced so quickly, and the fact that all the air passes through a HEPA filter creates an environment that is very safe. In fact, through all of our onboard testing and modeling and analysis that I mentioned, we've determined that a fully packed airplane with everyone wearing masks has the same effect of being 2 meters or 7 feet distant from each other. So sitting on a fully packed airplane, it is as if you are 7 feet away from the person sitting next to you because of the air design flow and because other design features of the aircraft, which including the seat position itself. The seat in front of you is a block, is an additional mask, if you will. It's an additional barrier that can capture particles and stop their spread. So it's very important to understand how airflow and the aircraft design, interior design impacts these results. Next slide, please. Here, what you can see is airplanes compared to other environments that you might, live and work in. And it helps show how they are different in terms of how often the air is exchanged and what sorts of filtration systems you're likely to have in those environments. So whereas an airplane fully cycles all the air in 2 to 3 minutes, airports also have a very high cycle rate every 6 to 10 minutes. Now, of course, this would depend on the airport, but this is a kind of an average of a representative sample of airports. They have very active filtration systems and air recycling systems. Both the airport and the airplane also have high MERV ratings. So this is a technical term. The MERV is the minimum efficiency rating value. The reason why I mentioned that word, that technical term, is because the higher the number on a scale of 1 to 20, the more particles it removes from the air. You can see that aircraft, Boeing aircraft, are 17 and up, MERV rating out of 20. That means that they remove viruses and bacteria, including COVID, and many other, you can see the list of many other items that get removed, allergens and smog and so on. Airports are 13, above 13. So they also remove some viruses, bacteria, allergens, and smog. If you compare that to an office building, which would normally recycle its air every 12 to 30 minutes and have a MERV rating of 5 to 8, or a typical residence, which would take air to be exchanged an hour or longer and has a MERV rating of 2 to 6, which just is, again, to emphasize that in that travel journey, when you're in the airport, when you're in the airplane, you have very, very high levels of air filtration with very efficient air recycling and airflow systems that replace the air as you're traveling. Next slide, please. So just to summarize what I've said, the risk is low because of the cabin design, because of the airflow characteristics, and because of the disinfectant technology that we are working to design, deploy, and that our airline customers are putting to work. Because of those things, sitting on the aircraft has the effect of being 7 feet apart, even if you're seated next to someone on the aircraft. The truth is that we're all part of the solution. This is not a problem that a fancy app or a fancy spray can resolve. We have to all do our part. We have to wear masks. We have to do self-evaluations at home. And if we have symptoms, we don't travel. We don't expose others to that risk. So if we take that personal responsibility, then as Diani said, when you're ready to fly, we're ready to welcome you. We have that system in place, and we've been working hard, and we will continue to work to restore that confidence for the flying public in the air travel system. So let me go to the next slide. What I'd like to do is shift gears. I'm gonna leave the Confident Travel Initiative and talk just briefly about our outlook for the region. Like, what is the aviation outlook across Latin America and the Caribbean look like from the Boeing perspective? This comes from our current market outlook, which we released 2 weeks ago. And I think it serves as a useful context for the news that and the information that Horacio shared about the truly historic nature of the downturn that our industry faces. Next slide. This shows, a 40-year perspective of the aviation industry, how it's grown since 1980. Horacio talked to us about the dip you see with that dotted line. That's COVID. That's what COVID did to our industry, and it's truly an unprecedented, kind of impact that we've had on our industry. And so he talked about the job losses and the passenger traffic declines that we're all experiencing today. The message I want to put, if you take a 40-year view, you can see that the first box just above 2000, that's 9/11. And then, just before 2010, the next box is the global financial crisis. Both of those were kind of epic, disasters that hit our industry, and they caused a downturn that doesn't compare to the one we've experienced last year. Right? We're in unprecedented territory. But what it shows is that once you come back from the downturn, you get right back on track where you were. And that is what we expect will happen again. The resilience of our industry is intact. We have a strong industry driven by people's need and desire to travel and be connected with their family, their friends, their business, connections. That need and desire for human connection is as strong as it ever was. And our industry will continue to grow over the next 20 years. Next slide. Our view for the region is that if you assume, and our assumption is a modest growth rate of 2.2% across Latin America and the Caribbean. So we don't need to return to headier days of higher growth, but that's our projection for regional growth over the next 20 years. That will drive a 5.1% growth in traffic measured by revenue passenger kilometers, which is the cumulative distance that passengers actually fly. That growth will drive growth in the need for the fleet itself. The aircraft will grow 3.5%. This is from 2021 until 2039. So on the next slide, if you just take those assumptions and you take them out until 2039, Boeing predicts that Latin America and the Caribbean will need more than 2,600 new airplanes over the next 20 years. As we've seen, our industry has responded to crises in the past. It's demonstrated its ability to be resilient. People need and want to fly, and that will continue to be true through COVID. This downturn and our recovery from it we expect to see an accelerated replacement of aircraft. So airlines will look to replace old with new. And those new aircraft bring all sorts of fuel efficiencies and environmental sustainability that are important, not only for our environment, but increasingly for the business, as we all strive to meet our climate goals and demands from the flying public that our carbon footprint as an industry be reduced. So 2,600 aircraft is about $395 billion at market value. So that's a big future that as the Boeing company, we're committed to building around, and we're going to work with our partners like American Airlines and IATA and all the others who you saw on that chart to get through this current moment and build into that future that we see ahead. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Landon.
Thanks, Landon. Over to you, Alexandre, please.
Thank you, Diane. So good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of American Airlines, I would like to thank the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, Alexandre, and my colleagues here, Landon and Horacio, for the invitation, and also for the opportunity to contribute on this important discussion. We are, as you have seen, we are facing the most serious unprecedented global crisis in our industry, and we are all taking the necessary measures to ensure that our customers are safe. And today, I would like to talk to you about our clean commitment. But before we move to the next one, Diane, let me just remind everyone of the COVID testing requirements that since January 26, all passengers traveling to the US from any international location to test negative for the COVID-19 within 3 calendar days of departure. This is very important. I just wanted to remind everyone. Next, please. So American's clean commitment strategy is built under 3 main principles, which is trust, peace of mind, and control. In regards to trust, we created a travel health advisory panel, including a Vanderbilt University Medical Center, to advise on health and cleaning. These experts have been providing American with the latest information from public health authorities and specific research, as well as advice and guidance on disease prevention, cleaning procedures, and other public health matters. American is also working with the Global Biorisk Advisory Council, which is GBAC, for STAR accreditation for its fleet and aircraft, and also with the customers' lounges. In regards to the peace of mind, the cleaning program at American Airlines only uses EPA-approved products that are safe for team members and customers, so that every surface is protected. Planes are cleaned with care before every flight, including high-touch surfaces like seatbelt, tray tables, and more. We have mandated the use of face covering in our gates and on board on our planes, and also deployed a symptom checklist available during the check-in process to certify that our passengers are free of COVID-19 symptoms. In regards to the control, we provide customers the advanced notification. Usually it's up to 7 days. So when flights are getting full, we give our travelers the option to change their flights to an emptier one, if available, as free of charge. Also, we have associated with Purell to provide this widely recognized product at the gates and on board our planes, and deploy technology that enhance our customers' experience with a new touchless check-in experience, allowing them to proceed to the gate without touching the kiosk screen, even if they have to check a bag. Next slide, please, Dan. So in regards to the surface-wise, to really quick on that, we are upgrading the clean commitment by adding this electrostatic, as Landon was mentioning before. There are so many. In this case, we do use the electrostatic spraying solution called Surface-Wise 2. It is a multi-tiered cleaning and safety program. Surface-Wise 2 is long-lasting and creates an invisible barrier on surfaces, which is physically breaks down and kills virus cells, particularly on high-touch areas such as seats, armrests, tray tables, and overhead bins. Thanks. Next, Diane. We were the first airline to achieve the GBAC Star accreditation. So achieving the GBAC Star means that these experts have determined that American's aircraft and lounges have a comprehensive plan to establish and maintain a cleaning, disinfection, and ensure the proper cleaning protocols, disinfection techniques, and practices are in place. Next, please. The HEPA filters. I'm not gonna talk much about HEPA filters. Landon explained how this works. I just want to mention that these HEPA filters have purified air on American Airlines' entire main fleet and most regional jets since the late 1990s. The HEPA filters in use of American Airlines fleet capture at least 99.97% of airborne microbes by circulating the cabin air once every 2 to 4 minutes. And as I mentioned, Lyndon talked a lot about the HEPA filter, so I think we're good to go to the next one. Thank you, Diane. So the VeriFly, my colleague Horacio also mentioned about a mobile digital health passport. This is a product from Dayon, which is our mobile passport app that helps our customers and teams navigate through all the travel requirements for specific countries. The app is an organic checklist of all entry requirements, and it stores the information and lets you know when you have met all the requirements by displaying a green check at the end of the process. So it makes your life much easier when flying to a country that has COVID-19 requirements. And also it's available, this VeriFly, it's available to travel to the United States, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Colombia, El Salvador, and a few other countries such as United Kingdom and a few others that I can give more details later. And last on that presentation, I just want to talk about another tool that is very useful and will help our customers to get the detailed information before the departure. So we have launched a new tool powered by Sherpa that helps customers to quickly see the current coronavirus travel guidelines for domestic and international destinations. Customers can access the Sherpa Travel Guide from the AA.com website. Just click on Travel Updates page under the Travel Guidelines section. When a destination is entered, the results will show up to guideline information as well as travel requirements such as face covering, COVID test, and forms that you have to fill out. So it's very, very interesting, and I really recommend everyone to check before they fly, and also use an app such as the IATA one or the VeriFly that will help you guide and easier the process at the airport. So you are the reason why we fly. I will pause now. I believe I do have another slide, but it's more for questions. I don't know how you guys wanna, I think we're gonna go over the questions later, right? Thank you so much, Diane.
Thank you, Alexandre.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandre, very much for your presentation. I think we're ready for the questions from the audience. I want to start with the first one here that I think the three of you could give a little brief of a comment on this, is how are governments in Latin America supporting the aviation industry to ensure a safe and speedy recovery for commercial travel? So Horacio, would you like to go first?
Sure, absolutely. You know, unfortunately, from the standpoint of how governments within Latin America have played a role, unfortunately, we've not seen the level of engagement throughout the region as far as their ability to provide either alleviation or support to the industry. And we, obviously, the industry had many aircraft parked for long periods of time. And we've seen significant levels of support provided by places in the US, example being the US and other parts of Europe. But there have been few states in Latin America that have really delivered that level of cooperation. That said, at least on the financial side, Brazil, Colombia have been amongst those that have provided some levels of support. In any event, what we are looking to do now is really trying to work with those states on whatever additional alleviation can be provided, and at the same time partner with them as well on the protocols that they're implementing and what alignment we can see them put in place that is consistent on a broader basis, and that doesn't impede the ability for airlines and aviation to reinstate service in the restart process. So hopefully I've touched on it sufficiently on the question.
One comment I'll make on that is just to highlight something that Horacio mentioned, but one key thing that governments can do, aside from the financial support, which he touched on, is create an aligned and coordinated approach to reopening safely. We believe that it's possible to reopen safely, and it's necessary that governments facilitate the coordination and harmonization so that travel can resume. And if you just look at Brazil as an example, where the domestic travel market and flight, passenger traffic is recovered to 60, 65, almost approaching 70 at one point percent of its pre-COVID levels, the international rate is still down at like 30%. It's not because Brazilians don't want to travel, it's because they can't. And we understand there are good reasons behind some of these approaches, but the extent to which data-driven, model-based analysis can go into responsible and safe reopening, that would help, I think, a lot the industry recover, particularly on the international side. Thanks.
How you guys see if governments decide to jointly incorporate sort of the vaccination card with international travel document, the passports? Would that be something feasible? Because that would be an initiative from the actual governments. Each one has their own passports, and to incorporate that into each one's traveling book.
I mean, I can say from our standpoint, I think from what we've explored at this point, it's premature to see that type of vaccine documentation or vaccine passport of sorts implemented at this juncture or anytime in the near future. Until we see and there are sufficient vaccines available on a broader basis, it's very difficult to have that be an accepted prerequisite for travel across the board. So I think there's still some progress that needs to be made in the rollout of vaccine programs around the world in order for that to be considered effectively something that could be put in place.
Yeah, I would agree. I would just, to me, the data that is most compelling in answering that question, I think in kind of backing up what Horacio said, is that in 2020, in the middle of the crisis when there were no vaccines, 2.1 billion passengers traveled and less than 60 transmissions took place. So if the last thing we want to do is condition travel on vaccines, because last year 2.1 billion people traveled and there were less than 60 cases. So what's important is that governments facilitate travel, not obstruct it.
Gotcha.
All right. One more question from the chat here is, how does American Airlines see travel restrictions moving forward after mass vaccination? Combined to that, I would add, will vaccinated passengers still need to be tested? What are the expectations?
So we are working with the authorities, really close to the authorities, and CDC is making updates on their policy almost nowadays, almost every week, right? So yesterday or the day before, they just made an announcement on how people should take care of themselves after getting vaccinated. And I think this is gonna happen at some point. It's just not clear yet. It's too early to say what will be the impact. I do believe that at some point it will make travel easier, and the process will be easier for all the customers at some point.
Good, thanks, Alexandre. One more. The airline business was difficult prior to the pandemic. Don't you think that this is the time to rethink business model and not just fight to recover back to normal?
I mean, I can take a stab at answering that, and Alexandra, obviously, you've got firsthand experience from the airline vantage point. Airlines in Latin America, at least based in Latin America, have not been profitable for some time, at least even prior to 2019, at the height of the volumes that we were seeing pre-COVID. So certainly, I think everybody's being put to the test, and we are going to see the industry challenged in the way that they revisit their business models and look at every avenue to reevaluate what needs to be done and how it needs to be done differently in order to better meet the needs of the traveling public. Live in a COVID, non-COVID free. COVID, I think, is going to be around. If it's not that, then it'll be something else. And I think this has awoken us to a series of factors that will likely become part of our new reality in the way that we have to plan for for travel and the models that airlines will have to take into consideration the way they go forward. So, I mean, very general, but offering that as a point of view at this point. Alexander, I didn't know if, I'm sorry, I hope I didn't take the word from you.
No, of course not. Thank you. I agree with you. And I just wanted to add that, yes, it's a very good question. People and the airlines are rethinking about the business model for sure. And I believe nowadays you see more airlines looking for more efficient planes. They will look at their network. It was once more on the corporate side that may be now moving more towards to a leisure destination. And there will be changes on everything. What is the process of payment process? I believe it is changing and it will continue to change.
All right. I think I got time for one more questions. All right. What is IATA prediction to Brazilian travel ban to be finished, considering vaccination rates in the US and Brazil versus COVID cases?
Vaccination ban, US-wise?
Yes.
In the US. So hopefully with the vaccination rollout, that there will be some sort of improvement. I think obviously having to see how that plays out in the case of Brazil over a period of time, we certainly are not supportive of bans at all. And as Landon mentioned earlier, we want to see what we can do to put mitigated risk factors in play and ensure that testing is a means to filter and at least process folks that can possibly travel, and that remains an open possibility. So we're not supportive of bans if avoidable. I think the vaccination rollout in Brazil will ultimately be part of what is taken into consideration from the US perspective as it applies.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think
Danny, can I just jump in? I saw one question just about coughing, and I just want to address that because it's just a very practical concern that someone, very reasonable, very practical concern. Someone said, "What about if someone coughs on the airplane? How does that affect the the MERV rating, or how does that affect the cleanliness of the air?" And so just to be completely clear, when Boeing did the testing that I was talking about, when we did all the in-flight analysis on the airplane and the testing in the data labs, we did computational fluid dynamics of coughing. So that is exactly what we tested. And what we did is first start with a model where the computer, using a airflow algorithm, can predict where the air molecules go. Then we take that and we put it in a simulated lab environment, and we produce a cough and we test it. Then we put it in an airplane, and we do it. We have a cough in an airplane, the airplane on the ground, the airplane in flight. We have a real airplane flying around with coughing, and we measure all the particles and where they go. And that is the analysis that I'm talking about, so that we measure all the particles, where they go. The fact that you have the seat front in front of you basically functions like a plexiglass shield at a checkout window, right? So you've got that in front of you, you've got a mask on, and you've got the air filtration system pulling the air straight into the floor through a HEPA filter. So it's an environment that is designed to contain that air, even if coughed. And it's in those conditions that you are still equivalent to being 7 feet away from everyone around you. The particle dispersion from a cough is the same on an airplane as if in a different environment you were 7 feet away from that person. So I just wanted to be explicit about that because it's a great question, and it's exactly what we were testing when I was talking about the efforts that we'd made before. Thanks.
Thanks, Landon. While you're getting to the top of the hour, I would like to ask our panelists to do your closing remarks. Horacio, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think as Landon mentioned earlier, we're focusing as an industry on trying to create confidence in the return to air travel, recognizing that there's a whole series of components on the ground, in the air, and the mitigated factors that need to be taken into consideration. our effort to work collaboratively with governments on aligning policies and not seeing a digression of different procedures and requirements, which make it very difficult to comply with. And so for us, obviously, I think aviation is critical to the benefit and the value that it brings to states throughout. So we want to see airplanes get back in the air, people moving, conducting business, doing tourism-related activities. So anything we can do to further build on that, you can count on it from my IATA's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Horacio. Landon?
Yeah, from my point of view, I just want to reiterate that you've got, we're in an unprecedented, crisis in our industry, if you will, but that has brought all the partners together. We're all working together to solve this problem. The amount of research and collaboration and effort that is going into, creating new solutions, testing the outcome and the efficacy of the solutions we have, and deploying them, into the system immediately in cooperation with all of our airline partners is also an unprecedented response. And while we're going through a tough time, the future of our industry, not just globally, but in our region, is strong. And Boeing is proud to be working with IATA, with American Airlines, with our other partners to be a part of that future, to get through this moment together and get into that better and stronger future. Thanks.
Thank you, Landon. Alexandre?
I just want to say that you can see that we are pretty much aligned. Everyone here is talking about working together to make it a brighter future. And that's the message that everyone wants to hear. The efforts that we are doing definitely will bring benefits to our customers and everyone. So thanks again. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Piquet, would you like to say some words?
Yes, thank you very much, Alexandre, Landon, Horacio, Diane. This was an incredible presentation. I personally feel much more comfortable to travel with my family now after hearing all the good news and the efforts that you guys are jointly promoting and implementing. So congratulations and thank you for being here. Hopefully everyone watching us will spread the information. And I would like to ask you, if possible, to make available the presentations, because those slides were amazing, full of very important information. So if that is something that you guys could share with us, so we can make it available to the members, that would be amazing.
All right. Well, to wrap up this call, just want to share with the audience, Boeing has recently launched a website with some recommendations on how to travel safely. So if you want to know more about travel confidentially, you can visit the website. This presentation will be available to the audience, and you can check all the material that were presented here. Just to mention, this website is also available in Portuguese and Spanish as well. All right, so I would like to wrap up the call, wishing you all to stay safe and have a good afternoon. Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just one more picture, please.
Okay.
Thank you
This is
so
a great
much.
event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Horacio and Alex, thanks so much. PK, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank
Likewise.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
day.
Take care.
Take care.
Ciao,
Bye-bye.
ciao.
Bye.